In today's episode, I am speaking with Elinor Moshe, founder of The Construction Coach, where she guides, inspires, and directs industry professionals and future leaders to propel their career in construction. Elinor has experience working on project delivery in commercial construction and has delivered over 100 mil of work, including new build and fit outs for public and private clients. She has been featured in the Australian National Construction Review, Property Council of Australia's Top 500 Women in Property program, Top 100 Women in Construction, and is a coveted speaker and author of new book, Constructing Your Career. Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Welcome, Elinor.
Thank you very much for having me.
Look, it's great to have you here, and I'm sorry we can't meet in person during these strange times. If you've listened to my podcast previously, you'll probably know that I always like to start at the beginning. I know that you studied architecture at University of Melbourne. Can you tell us how you came to choose that course in the beginning?
Back in year 12, 10 years ago, how time has absolutely flown and what a journey it has been. I was very good at visual arts and they put me as a creative, and I am a creative, but not in that typical sense. So obviously, you know what they say, an artist can't make a career and so on and so forth. So I found architecture and I went to all the open days at university, and again, even those career advisors said, well, don't do architecture because there's no money in it and it's not glamorous. But I love a challenge and I love doing things when people say you can't or you shouldn't. So I pursued architecture in a way to marry a realistic career, whatever that means, versus my creative streak. And right now I cannot draw anything if my life depended on it. So I wonder where that creativity streak came from. So I started with the Bachelor of Architecture, and whilst I was always frustrated with the design process within itself, I never got joy out of that process. I did discover my love for the built environment and understanding buildings, and I absolutely love history. So architecture was a real amalgamation of the arts and the urban environment, but for me to make a career out of that, I was always frustrated. And the people that did really well were those that had illogical ideas. And to me, that didn't make sense. They were, really rewarded for their imagination, which I think is fantastic. Obviously now in retrospect, it's required. But back then, that didn't suit me because I am, again, as I said, a creative and imaginative person, but not in the architectural context.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so did you actually start working in an architecture firm after completing your study?
So during my bachelor's, I was the least engaged student. I didn't go to any class. And I remember once we were sitting in the hallway of the MSD building and a professor walked by and everyone was saying, oh, that's this and that person. And I said, who's this? And they're like, how do you not know? We've been hearing it for the last 12 weeks. I was so disengaged in the community, in my own future, in the academia. I wasn't the person who was P's get degrees. I was still achieving 80s and 90s, but I was not involved. And that really didn't help because then I did the mistake that every graduate does. You finish your degree and then you start looking for employment. So I arrived at that point, and because I wasn't engaged, I didn't know that you needed a portfolio. And of course, I didn't have one. So I did go to one interview, which was set up by an academic professor, and it was a train wreck. It was horrible. I was not prepared. I had no idea why I wanted to be there. No idea what I was doing. I had a cold. It was not working. And I remember leaving the interview, I was standing there on Wellington Place, feeling a bit sorry for myself. And I made myself a promise that I would never let a situation like that happen to my career where I felt helpless or where I was not prepared enough. And then I think I applied for just another position. I remember sending out, going down the conventional avenue of just sending people emails and of course, that is a path of greatest resistance, and I didn't find anything per se. So I took that gap year and I worked retail, traveled to Europe, and moved on to other paths. But, it wasn't because there were no jobs. It was because I applied myself in the wrong way back then, obviously knowing what I know now, and it obviously wasn't meant to be for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's quite staggering, isn't it, that you didn't know that you needed a folio?
Not at all. Yeah, it sounds basic, but that's the consequence of not being engaged. And whether, looking back, was it because I couldn't see a future in it, potentially because I didn't want it? There were many reasons, but I didn't set myself up for success as a student, and I see that still being the case.
Yeah, look, I see clients all the time who are coming from uni, finishing their degrees, but really haven't networked in the industry, haven't really considered what the career outcomes are at the end of that course. I can't tell you how many people I meet who have studied something, and when I tell them the jobs that they're eligible to apply for, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." It's like, well, maybe you should have found that out before you studied your degree. And so tell us what then led you to decide to go back and study a master in construction management.
It was in the last year of my bachelor degree, which we myself and the few members of the cohort organised an international exhibition of Chilean architects. And I was less interested in the architecture part, but more so in the management part. And I assumed the automatic leadership position in making that happen. And I absolutely loved it. I love the planning. I love the processes. I love thinking, okay, that's our end goal. This is what we need to do right now. I was really good at, I still am, reverse engineering the process. So talking to the course advisor, he's like, okay, here's the list of master's degrees available. So architecture, I enrolled, I got in, I rejected it. Urban planning wasn't for me. Property, didn't know what it was. Construction management, it's about the building environment, it's about processes, it's so many things on paper. So back then I rolled the dice. It was a big decision once upon a time, and I enrolled in my Master of Construction Management, and obviously the rest is absolutely history. The first year was enlightening, unraveling. It was too much at once and not enough. It started answering a lot of my questions from the build process as to how does this actually happen? How does a building come to life? What are the processes? What are the financing? How does this stand up? So on and so forth. So I really did find myself within the degree early on, and I made myself a promise that if I am going to pursue further studies, then I will be engaged. And that's what I did. I was very engaged. I wasn't a wallflower anymore. I was very active in pursuing employment from, no, I wouldn't say the start, but early on, and really priming myself to understand the industry. And of course, that paid off in quantum leaps and bounds in my career.
Did you do any sort of research about the industry before you chose to study the masters?
No, because, well, yes, I did. You do a desktop research, but no, in that there isn't much content about construction management online, and anything that there is so limited in terms of showing people what's possible. And I'm sure we'll get to it later, but that's part of the founding reasons of the construction coach. So it really was a stab in the dark, because I also didn't know anyone that had a career in construction. It really, from a practical sense, it didn't mean much to me. But I was also someone who was very linear in my approach, in that the career part will happen after. I didn't give that a lot of consideration because I was so used to academia, and I am a very good student. But of course, how that has changed.
So tell me, so you finished the masters and then you started working in contracts administration, which I believe is a fairly sort of typical entry-level role for people who have finished their studies. What are well, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about what that type of role involves on a day-to-day basis?
Typically when people in a construction management stream graduate or are near graduating, they end up working on project delivery, so front end of a construction business actually working on the day-to-day management of delivering a project. So you are part of the project team, which manages the processes, the people, the permits, the clients, everything that is involved, the finances, the procurement, the legalities, into delivering a project. So as a contracts administrator, you are fundamentally responsible for the financial and the procurement of a project. You're really responsible for some of the key trade packages. If you have a project coordinator working under you, then you obviously are responsible for their performance and their output and the coordination of the works as a whole. But contract administrators are really the engines of a project, because they know where every dollar is on a project, and you really have to know the financial situation of a project in order to know, are we on track? Are we not? Is it actually going to turn a profit? What are the risks? So contract administrators have to know everything about everything on the project. And of course, of varying degrees, the larger the project, the less you are able to do that, purely because the quantum of work's involved. But between the $0 to $50 million mark, a CA can definitely have an umbrella picture and also a detailed one as to what the project is, where it is at the moment. And if a site manager wants to ask a question, they can answer that, or the project manager can also come to a CA. So the CA, we're the first people on a project where people come to find out anything or ask a question. So you really do have to have both really good business acumen, but also really solid understanding of construction methodologies and technologies.
That's a great overview, and I've learned a lot already. So thank you. So tell me, after working in the contracts administration space, what would be the natural career path after that?
Conventionally, it's into a project manager type role, and that could either be working for a head contractor, so still on project delivery, delivering the final build, or we do find that within the industry at the 5-year mark, people want a different lifestyle and less hours. And this is not a criticism, it is a very fair consideration, because the hours associated with working on site are significant, and depending on the size of the project, they can be more demanding than others. So people also transit into client-side project managers. People may also just stay as contracts administrators, going into a senior contracts administrator position. They can move into contracts management, so having a bit more of an internal business focus, and that ties in the commercial avenue. Some people do a complete 360, or not necessarily a 360, but they move to consultancy type. So they might choose to specialize, say, in quantity surveying, or maybe a type of engineering, which is less likely. But some people do find their passion in traffic management or facade engineering. Really, there is an unlimited amount of opportunity in the industry. But conventionally, you do find that people start at the entry-level project delivery and then work their way up to project management, construction management, and either stay there or transfer into the business side of the construction company.
What would you say are some of the pros and cons of working in construction management? You've obviously mentioned a couple already around the hours. Are there any other cons that you would think people need to think about before moving into this industry?
That's a very good question, and that's really the first chapter of my book, is getting people to do a feasibility about, is this industry actually for you? Because it's not sexy. There is nothing glamorous about working in construction. Maybe if you are on the consultancy side, but on front-end project delivery, you could be facing 6 a.m. concrete starts, and you could be there till 10 o'clock until the last cubic meter of concrete has been poured. And that, of course, has flow-on effects to other aspects of your life. The hours are considerable. It's early starts and late finishes. And of course, this is an umbrella statement. There are companies which really, do consider the lifestyle, even though you work for a builder, or not even lifestyle, but understanding that you have other aspects of your life that deserve fulfillment, and not every company deserves not every company demands extreme hours. I know there are some quite large contractors which are still very much an 8 to 5, and they know that if a person isn't fulfilling their duties under the 8 to 5, well, they're actually overworked. They need to bring on more people. So, there are companies that are quite forward thinking with this, but also with the lifestyle, if you're working on site, you're on site all day, every day. And sometimes your sites are in Derrimut where there is nothing around you. And then one day the next day you'll move to Dandenong because that's where the project is. So you aren't always in one space, but you don't control the proximity to home. And that, of course, driving 4 hours to and from sometimes, or 2 hours, whatever it is a considerable consideration. And it is an industry where the rule of thumb is in the 20s you earn and in the 30s you earn. So this isn't to say it is a very well-paying industry. Obviously, the market itself is above average, but you do have to realise that high levels of salary also require high levels of responsibility, and you do assume a level of risk and expectation. So it's not like you get a 100K salary to just push paper. You're delivering on really big outcomes. And the other con is it is a high-risk environment, and whether that's a con or not, but, you are taking on a responsibility as part of the management team to ensure the safety of other people, because everyone has the right to leave work just as they came in. So that's also a consideration, but it's definitely not all negative. There are also lots of pros. I mean, the opportunity is incredible. The amount of innovation and thought leadership that is required in the next 10 years in the industry is unprecedented, especially in what we're experiencing right now. And what people love the most about the industry is the chance to leave a legacy behind, because we're working on projects that will hopefully outlast us. It's, we're leaving something behind, and it's one of the few industries which you can drive by a project and say, hey, I built this, and I still remember all the little nuances about a building. I did a project in Melbourne Airport, PRF, and when I fly out of it with my friends or whom I'm traveling with, I always want to tell them about the project, and they are mildly interested in the first. And of course, I spoke about the remuneration. It is a market that does pay above average, but that is, of course, in consideration to the work that you are expected to do. And what I do love about the industry is you learn high income skills and you develop high income attributes, which really does lend itself to many different arenas of your life. People become very comfortable with making quick decisions and solving complex problems. That's if they're exceptional and not just pushing paper or average. You become very comfortable with having difficult conversations. You're not afraid of facing up to problems, because on a construction site, they're in your face right there and they need answers. You're very good at management and managing priorities and stakeholders. So, I think the real opportunity is who you can become as a result of working in the construction industry.
Just wanted to go back. You mentioned having difficult conversations. I have had a couple of clients who've come to me in the past for career coaching who are looking to get out of the construction industry. And I remember one of them specifically, his feedback was that it's a very negative environment and he felt there was just constant conflict, and that really drained him. He was, I guess, someone who is more of a helper and was more comfortable in a collaborative, supportive environment. What comments could you make about type of conflict management that's required?
Definitely when you work in construction, and because you're project based in a way, you do deal with many different personalities. And yes, there are certain approaches which are old school and they do run on adversary, but that's definitely not how it is across the board. There are companies that are more mature and able to not target or attack the individual, but to focus on the problem. And people that do experience this negative side of the industry experience high levels of burnout and fatigue and just don't want to be part of the industry. But unfortunately, when people leave the industry, so does all their expertise get lost. But in the moment, well, it's actually, as I said before, it's understanding what is the problem, why is this escalated. It's probably already fueled with emotions which are not helping the situation. So you kind of have to take it back to fundamentals and understand what is everyone's expectation, how can we actually focus on the solution instead of churning over the problem. Because I've been also in many scenarios in the industry and on projects where people just keep on repeating the problem and like, hey, can we focus on a solution that is equitable in a collaborative manner? And when you really do push that agenda and you yourself embody those values, it can happen, and you do see it in the industry. But as you said, you do also have people who experience a really ugly side of the industry.
I would assume it is a fairly male-dominated industry. Are there additional challenges that you see for females working in the industry?
That's a really good question. The issue is also around the conversation and around females in the industry. I bought into a lot of that conversation when I first started in the industry, and it wasn't serving me. Obviously, it's easy to connect the dots looking back, not necessarily connect the dots looking forward. And instead of actually trying to make sure that everyone is the best version of themselves in the industry, which is my approach, if everyone was operating at a 10 out of 10 level, the industry wouldn't have the afflictions that it does. Because when you look at the problems in the industry, it's only a reflection of the sum of its parts. And who are the parts? It's the people. The people have caused the ruptures in the industry. But if everyone was a 10 out of 10 optimal person, would we have these issues? No, we wouldn't. That's why my book is about working on the 12 foundational stages of on your greatest project ever, which is you. Like, we have to raise the status quo and the levels of careers within the industry. But there is a lot of opportunity for people, and especially women in the industry, because women naturally gravitate towards leadership. And we know the positive consequences of having female leaders, not just for the bottom line, but for the general betterment of the community and the future of the industry. So there is a wealth of opportunity for leadership and to really inhabit that space, especially thought leadership. But you can't be that when you're buying into the conversation of being victimized or, being automatically put in a disadvantage. I never felt that when I entered into the industry, I was disadvantaged because of my gender. And if I believed the conversation around me and I would position myself as such, then yes, I would have felt that way. And yes, I have been in situations where I found out I was underpaid. I up and left, and I became one of the highest paid CAs in an organization. So it's about understanding, well, what can you control? And I can control 90% of what's happening in my career, as long as you don't buy into the conversation about the problems that are happening in the industry, and also look to the opportunities that there are.
You mentioned your book, and I'm very keen to hear more about your book. But before we go on to that, one thing I'm interested in is whether you tend to see people transferring into construction management, people who've made a career change into that industry.
Definitely. I see people from really interesting non-cognate industries, army, military, tech, graphic design, PR, communications, and then some closer industries such as property and architecture. So definitely people are drawn to this because the skills are across the board, required. Like exemplary communication is required, and you can to some extent teach people to have the right attributes, not the right attitude. And you can definitely teach anyone who wants to learn about the technicalities of construction.
Very interesting that there's such a diverse range of backgrounds. I wouldn't have expected people would come from all of those backgrounds. If one of our listeners was interested in potentially making a career change into construction management, would you recommend that they go back and do study in this area? Is that pretty much a prerequisite to get a contract administration role, for example?
Definitely not. So you don't need to undertake a 3-year tertiary degree, which is antiquated and rote in terms of its learning, in order to jump into the deep end and learn everything you need on site. I was studying and learning at the same time, and it was what I was learning in industry that was helping me finish my degree and reinforcing that knowledge, and not vice versa, because construction is dynamic. Construction is about problem solving then and there. Construction isn't about, here, go and memorize all of this, and then we're going to test you in 12 weeks' time. Everything happens in the now. So university doesn't set you up for massive career success in construction. And there is a common joke in the industry that when people enter the industry after they've graduated, there's a period of unlearning, which is everything that you learn, we're just going to park that, and this is how it's actually done. So for people wanting to get an in, definitely if you are an academic person, not a 3-year degree, there are diplomas, there are different ways around it if you want to undertake further study, because all that really demonstrates is your commitment. But I have seen many people in the industry who have showed that they have the right attributes, the right skill sets, which will make them successful. And you just need a company to give you a chance to prove yourself, to say, I can learn. I know what I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And, we have to realize that we all started off with no knowledge, no technical understanding about the details of construction methodology and technology. So is it a requisite? No. What do you actually need? You need to know your why. You need the passion, the purpose, and you need to say, okay, this is what I can bring to the industry because this is what the industry needs. And then it's about activating your networks and making sure that, someone will give you a chance, and people really do give people chances in the industry.
Okay, that's good to hear. And you mentioned before about a diploma. Would that be a diploma in project management or construction management?
I think the diplomas around it, there's a diploma of building and construction that is a bit more trade orientated, but it's allows you to bypass a 3-year degree. 3 years is just a long period of time. And if you look at what actually accounts to career success, I mean, you look at Branson, you look at Zuckerberg, degrees are just not necessary until, if degrees can prove their value to the industry and not be such a common good, then yes, the discourse will change. But, there are diplomas, project management to get into a more client-side project management space, not project delivery per se. So, there are different, more cost-effective options available if you do want to start bridging the gap via a degree.
There's obviously a lot of project management courses out there, and often people feel that if they go and do a course like that, that will help them get into the industry, I should say. Is there a particular project management methodology that is used most in this industry?
Not necessarily. The new way of project management is being a collaborator. It's how I see it is you're the coach. This is a team. You're given a team and you're the coach, and you have to make sure that everyone else is doing exactly what they need to be doing. So it's, in terms of actually project management styles, that has to be dynamic. That has to be, every project team is different, and you're always going to get different individuals who need to be managed in a different way, and someone wants to be spoken to in a different way. So it's more the attributes of successful management which are important, more than subscribing to different styles of management. And of course, every company does things a little bit different. So it's more about, finding the company which has a style and people that really suit who you wish to become in the industry.
So last year you set up your own business. So you're the founder of The Construction Coach. What inspired you to go out and set up a coaching business?
It's actually Australia's first construction coach. So I didn't know that at the time, but good old desktop research, I found that there is no other construction coaching or mentoring business like mine. And when I did graduate, I immediately started tutoring because I'm someone who wants more, and just doing one thing is insufficient for me. So I started tutoring, but those questions and those tutoring sessions with me very quickly turned into the mentoring conversations. I don't know how my career in construction looks like, or what does project management actually mean, or I want to be a construction manager. Can I do that in a year? The answer is no. So there were commonalities in the experience as to when you're standing at the outset of the industry. So I asked the universe a better question after 2 years of hustling every single weekend tutoring, and also got to a point where I had more private clients than I had time. So that wasn't a scalable model. So I asked the universe a better question: how can I reach more people? And then fast forward to April that year, the universe just downloaded the construction coach into me, and I listened. Obviously, we get ideas every day. Not everyone listens to them. So I was up till 5 a.m. that morning, from 11 o'clock at night, registering an ABN, figuring out how to build a website, and I filled a notebook with ideas. And a month later, I had it all ready, the website-wise, and I launched. And at first, it was just a blog, which, society will make sure that we think small and we don't want to think too big in case of what people think, which really is not a consideration anymore. And the blog was really well received. People saying that there's nothing out there like this, and it was getting shares, it was getting likes. And fast forward, I kept on identifying people are lost in their construction careers. People are confused. People are overwhelmed. And this isn't just at the entry level. This is at many different levels. So it is my duty as an industry leader to show people what is possible in your career in construction. It's my duty to raise the standards of careers, to get them from average in order to have an exceptional one. Because even prior to the construction coach, people would always look at me and say, "You're so successful. How'd you do it?" And only when you look back and realize, okay, what is it that people perceive to be so successful, can you then package that up and ensure that other people have the same experience. So it started as a blog, and then into sold out events, and then into more sold out events and networking events and private mentoring services catering to different tiers within the industry, and then a podcast, and then the book.
And tell us about the book.
The book, yeah, actually, it's the first hard copy. The first hard copy that there is. Now it feels real to me. Up until Thursday, it's felt like a Word document, a manuscript. That's all I've ever seen it as. But now it's actually cemented itself as a book. And, the ambition behind it is, I will never get the chance to mentor everyone in the industry. Not everyone will work with me. But this book is the mentor that I once needed in my career. This book is the mentor that the industry needs, because there is also no other book out there like this, which ties in holistic career development. You will get books that, deep dive into just your purpose. You'll get books that only talk about networking. This pieces everything together. It's also contextual, because there are things that are particular to the construction industry, which when you're standing at the outset looking in, it's not made clear. And of course, I haven't approached this book from a technical perspective. It is about, these are the career intelligence decisions that you need to consider. But it also encompasses the internal work, because success is created from the inside out. We live from the inside out. And when people try and have massive career success, what they end up doing is they try to change the results without actually changing the thoughts and the feelings that are first required to drive your actions and then the results. So there is a discourse on the internal work that is first required to achieve career success. But, I've also filled it with pages and pages upon unconventional career intelligence, because I haven't subscribed to the thinking of the masses and the mindset of the masses. And that's why I have massive career success in, the only 7 years that I have been in the industry. So it is unconventional, because people need to stop leaving opportunity on the table. You need to take reign of your career. You need to get into the driver's seat, and you're the one driving it. So it is not just, an inspirational and a feel book good. It's, you need to get to work. That's how I work. It's very practical, and the transformation is going to come in the implementation.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure that took a lot of your time, and well done for getting it out. So in terms of this sort of level or the sort of person that you've pitched the book at, I imagine it'd be a great read for anyone studying construction management before they've even started their career. But in terms of people actually working in the industry, what sort of levels is it aimed towards?
As a thought leader, our markets are based on psychographics. So this book is only for ambitious people. It's not a shelf-help book. It's a self-help book. So you actually have to do it. So this is really for people who are ambitious, are willing to play the long-term game, because this isn't an overnight fix. This isn't a 10-day, I'm going to transform everything. No, everything in here takes time. The long-term game is the only game that I know how to play. And it's for people who do want holistic career success. So it is very relevant for people who may be excelling in one arena but do not understand what the facade of your career requires. But at the back of the book, I've also included a bonus section specifically for construction management graduates on basics. This is how you approach a market. This is where opportunities lie. This is how you stand out. This is how you write a CV. This is how you interview. This is your LinkedIn profile. And most importantly, this is what entry-level positions actually are, because at university, a lot they get told is project management. And I remember I did a lecture at Melbourne Uni once, and I asked the question, hands up if you want to be a project manager. All the hands went up. Then I said, hands up if you want to be a contracts administrator. No hands went up. How do you get to one without the other? You don't. So I've also shown them, well, this is the entry-level, these are the entry-level positions, and this is what it entails. So that will at least give them the starting point to bridge that gap between academia and the industry.
Wow, that sounds like a must read for any students out there studying construction or starting off earlier in their careers. So can you tell us, how can people find you, Elinor, if they would like to work with you or if they would like to buy your book?
If they would like to get their hands on my book, just search for Constructing Your Career on Amazon or Booktopia. It's also available in the Kindle version. And you can connect with me on Instagram at Elinor Moshe _ ELINOR MOSHE, and also on LinkedIn, Elinor Moshe. And you can visit my website, elinormoshe.com.
Well, that has been very helpful, Elinor. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I have learned so much from talking to you already, and I think your book sounds like a must read for anyone considering a move into the industry. So thank you for your time, and all the best for the book and for the remainder of the year.
Likewise. Thank you, Leah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.